It's no secret that this world has a lot of pain in it. Got to get my little magic clicker out. And my sermon title this morning is, What in the World Are We Doing? Okay. You'd think that I wouldn't have problems with the microphone, but it happens. So anyway, the question that I asked, what in the world are we doing, is one that's usually asked when there's just no explanation, reasonable explanation, for why things are being done the way we are. We're living in a world that has nothing to offer people but pain. And people in this room are no exception to that. We have pain in our lives too. The difference is that we don't have to face the pain alone. We have a Savior who walks with us every step of the way. Am I correct? But the world out there, they don't know that. And they're hurting. And they don't understand what to do. They don't understand why they're hurting in a lot of cases. In other cases, they understand why they're hurting, but they don't know what to do about it. In any case, there's a lot of pain, both amongst believers and amongst those, especially those who feel like they have no hope. I remember growing up, my childhood years early on were actually very comfortable. I really had no complaints. And so I was raised in the church. I was raised in the Baptist church. And as I was raised, the only time I ever really came into view of the kind of pain this world can offer is when someone in the church would pass away. But because we had the message of Jesus, I always looked at it like, well, I mean, it's sad that he's gone, but we have a hope. It was just always taught to me. From the nursery all the way up through, high school years, it was taught to me, we don't have to worry about it. Death it's a temporary thing. So I didn't really know the kind of pain this world can bring to people. But I remember starkly my first introduction to how evil this world is and how horribly it can afflict pain on people. There was a family that was on their way back from Lake Rosemount. Lake Rosemount, for those of you who don't know, is sort of a resort area about 35, 40 miles north of here. They were on their way back, and the parents in the first car noticed that the second car with the kids in it wasn't behind them. So they pulled off the road and they waited for the kids to catch up. After a while of waiting and the kids didn't catch up, they felt like they needed to go back and look for the kids. They headed back. They came across a terrible accident scene. And I happened to be at that scene because we were on our way back from Baton Rouge to St. Francisville. And the whole road was blocked, so that we were standing around watching the emergency responders do whatever they could, but it was very obvious that there really wasn't anything could be done. But these poor parents recognized one of the cars in the accident. So they got out. And because they weren't local, nobody knew who they were. And they walked up to the car and got the worst possible news about their kids in the worst possible way, with no warning, no one comforting them and sitting down with them. I think I was standing about 20 to 25 feet away, and I will never forget the wail that the mom emitted. It was the most horrible noise I've ever heard, and I still remember it 37 years later. And that was my introduction into how evil this world is, that somebody could hurt that bad. So it made a lasting impression on me. For one thing, I always wear seatbelts, long before it ever became law. And number two, as I was only 11 years old at the time, I swore that I would never, ever drink and drive. I was raised such that that wasn't really a problem anyway, but even as I grew older and as I moved out on my own, I swore that I would never want to cause that kind of pain to another human being. So it wasn't a wasted experience for me, but I came away from it as a third-party observer. My own life was actually very, very blessed. And even though I was very moved by what happened, it hadn't happened to me per se. So I went on thinking, wow, there's some horrible pain out there. It was remote, it was distant. You know, as I was telling you about my own life, it was very charmed by many people's standards. We were not wealthy, but my parents were well off enough to where for about the first 12 years or so, things were very, very comfortable. In fact, I grew up for those years in the house that you see on the screen here. Okay? It had 18 rooms. It sat on 60 acres of land. My 4 brothers and I had countless trees to go and climb and fall out of, which we did both of on a regular basis. I think my brothers and I probably, combined with those trees, account for about half my mom's gray hairs. But, some of those injuries required trips to the emergency room. But my dad being a doctor, we thought, well, he gets a discount, right? So it's okay. So we lived very comfortably. I mean, it was a very blessed existence, and I recognized that I was very fortunate to live like that. Many of the antiques in the house were made and designed by my mother's grandfather, my own great-grandfather. Here's another picture of our whole family in 1964. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but if you look very carefully, that little guy, that little guy is standing right here in front of you. So, as you can see, it was a much simpler world back then, and it was an existence that, as I'm older and I see the world for what it is, it was an existence that people, the mass majorities of people, would love to have had, and I recognize that. But as I said, pain, if it hits you once, it hit me at that accident scene on a remote basis. And about a year and a half later, my older brother was recovering from a perforated eardrum, and my mother heard him coughing, which is very bad for that. So her mother's instincts, she woke up, she smelled smoke. She smelled smoke. She quickly alerted all of us. Now, this house was built in 1821, so we had been trained from day one. When you smell smoke, if you think this house may be on fire, get out. We will gather on the yard, and then we will go back in and see what we can save. We all followed that training, and even though the 7 of us were sleeping all over that house at 2 a.m. when the fire started, we all got out safely. So there's God's blessing in that. Unfortunately, when we returned the next morning, that's what we found in our dream house. That was what was left of the only home I had ever known. And that was painful.